Hi folks, it's Kelvin here. We run coach for Leeds and surrounding areas as well as online coaching. In this little video, I'm going to share some thoughts on how I use heart rate zones whilst I'm running and to a certain degree in my training, and it might be a little bit different to what most people do. So one mistake I see people making is running and trying to stay within a certain zone where they maybe set a zone on the watch. I'm going to use zone 2 as an example, and they're either getting heart rate alerts when they go under or over, or they're constantly checking the watch to make sure they're in that zone. So whilst I'm training, there are a few things that I do with my heart rate. So one is I've set my heart rate zones correctly, and I also use an optical armband. So unless you're using an optical armband or a chest strap, the optical off just the watch isn't particularly accurate, so I probably wouldn't use that to train by. So the first thing that I do whilst I'm running is, before I start my run, whilst my watch is waiting to get a GPS signal, I just check in on my heart rate to make sure it's within a certain range that I know is okay, to make sure it's not unusually low or unusually high. And then I set my watch running and start my run. I normally do the first sort of mile quite easy. So maybe half a mile to a mile, again, I'll just check in on my heart rate and just make sure that nothing unusual is going on. And that can be a depressed heart rate as well. So it can be really low heart rate, which can be associated with fitness, but it can be associated with fatigue. So if my heart rate's sort of particularly low and I feel really well rested, maybe I'm coming out of a deload week, I might have had a day off training, that's probably my fitness showing. If my heart rate's depressed and I've done a really hard session, I've maybe had a poor night of sleep or other things going on in my life, it's probably fatigue, and that might just guide my workout. I'm not going to completely change my workout. It's also worth quickly mentioning that heart rate can also obviously be elevated when these things are going on as well. So we're looking for something that's kind of usual. And I'm probably not going to completely change a workout, but I will use it to guide. So let's say I'm doing a zone 2 run. I might, if my heart rate's not showing great figures, I'm maybe carrying a bit of fatigue, I might run more in the middle of zone 2. If my heart rate in that sort of initial glance and in that warm up is showing to be good, and I'm probably quite fit at the moment, I might run towards the top end of zone 2. So that's what I do to sort of roll into the run, and to keep my heart rate in zone 2. So I know that I'm about sort of 142 to 153, 154 is my zone 2. So one of the screens that I set on my watch is average heart rate. So the two heart rate screens that I can, on one screen, the two heart rate metrics that I can see are current heart rate and average heart rate. So what I'm looking at, I'm taking some glances at the current heart rate, as I've just mentioned, to make sure that it's not doing anything abnormal. But mainly, I'm going on the average heart rate. So, for a zone 2 run, I want to finish the run, and that's going to be somewhere around like 145 to 150. And I don't mind if for some of that run it's gone a little bit under, and for some of that run it's gone a little bit over. So what I'm doing is I'm running to perceived effort. So what I feel is my zone 2, and I'm using my heart rate to check in on periodically, but I'm not trying to use my watch to stay specifically in that zone. And then the other way that I'll use heart rate is then I use a platform like TrainingPeaks. You can use plugins for Strava, I believe, as well, that show my time in heart rate zones over longer periods of time. So if I've done a block of training and I've written the block to spend certain amounts of time in certain zones, at the end of that block, I'll look at this in retrospect, maybe that's a 4-week or a week, to make sure that I'm somewhere near with the time that I'm spending in those heart rate zones. It doesn't have to be exact, as long as broadly I've spent the right amount of time in those zones. So there's quite a lot in there. So please, I hope that makes sense. And if you do have any questions, please just pop them in the comments below. And for now, happy running.